All right, NFL fans, welcome back to another episode of the NFL Whip Around as we get you prepared for the Super Bowl. We have 2 weeks to do that. We need to talk about the conference championships. I'm Jeff Hartman, joined by Coach Kevin Smith. Coach, what's going on?
What's up, Jeff? Exciting games, man. Two very different contests, no doubt about it, but a lot to talk about.
There was a lot of excitement, and I thought that both, that we'll talk about it. We'll break these games down one by one because there were only 2 contests, and it was a good conference championship weekend, still marred with a little bit of conspiracy. But in totality, what did you think about the games yesterday? Or I'm sorry, Sunday?
Very entertaining. Even that Philly-Washington game, the final score got out of hand. Eagles winning by over 30 points, but it was competitive until deep into the second half, and it was exciting because with Barkley and Daniels and A.J. Brown and all those athletes on the field, you never knew when something was going to break. It felt like every play could potentially go to the house. And then obviously you have the Chiefs-Bills game, which is another chapter in what is becoming a fascinating, albeit if you're a Bills fan, horrendous rivalry.
Yeah, no, you're right.
But another great game, obviously.
All right, so let's start off in chronological order. The first game at 3:00 on Sunday was the NFC title game, Washington at Philadelphia. And I think that if you wanted to sum up this game into just give me one sequence, it would be the opening kickoff. The Commanders have a nice time-consuming drive that ends in a field goal. The Philadelphia Eagles get a nice return. The first play from scrimmage, Saquon Barkley touchdown, and it's just like they're off and running. And it was incredible when you saw at the end of the first quarter, even just to give you, again, if someone was in a coma and they didn't see the game, the Commanders dominated time of possession, yet the Eagles were up 14-3 at one point. This thing was crazy. I did feel like Mike Tomlin, he always said when someone asked about a rookie, how did he perform? And he said he didn't urinate down his leg. It felt like the Commanders urinated down their leg at times in this contest with some of the turnovers. What was your main takeaway from this game?
That was the big thing going in. Obviously, Philly's experience was significant, and the Commanders had never been here before outside of a couple guys like Zach Ertz and Bobby Wagner. So there was that. I think the Barkley home run on Philly's first offensive play was a monumental play because everything that the Commanders felt good about, they did just about everything that they wanted in that opening drive except finish it. They kick a field goal, which is a little bit deflating because they ran 17 plays, 17-play drive. You want to finish in the end zone. And boom, Barkley is gone like that, and it's such a kick in the you-know-what. My first year as a head coach, I'll never forget playing at Atlantic City High School, very explosive team. And we go on an 11-minute, 20-play drive, and we convert 3 fourth downs on the drive, and we finish it with a touchdown. And we're the underdogs in that game, and we're flying. We're feeling like, oh, this is all. We kick off, they freaking run it back for a touchdown. It took us 11 minutes to score. It took them 11 seconds to score, and we couldn't recover emotionally. Those types of home runs are, you could drive the ball for 15 plays and score on a 1-yard run, but when you score on a 70-yard touchdown run, there's something emotionally invigorating about that. They don't feel like they're even, and I thought that was a huge play for Philly.
All right, so let's talk narratives after this game. Is the narrative the Washington Commanders choked it away, that they were in position, the turnovers were just critical at really bad junctures, special teams to fumbles and things of that nature? Was it Jalen Hurts actually playing well more as a passer, going 20 of 28, 246 yards, a touchdown, no interceptions, with a rating of 110.1? Or is it Saquon Barkley should have cemented himself as the most valuable player in the league? 15 carries, 118 yards, a 7.9-yard average, and 3 rushing touchdowns. Which narrative would you go with in this NFC Championship game?
I think it's kind of all the above. I don't think that Washington choked this game away. I didn't think they played terribly. Yeah. They could have tackled better, but they just got worn out by a better team who didn't blink. The Eagles didn't make significant mistakes in this game. And the combination of Hurts playing well along with Barkley was huge. When Philly's got everybody rolling, that is a pick your poison offense, because you've got one of the best, if not best, wide receiver tandems in Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown outside. And then you've got the Hurts and Barkley run game to worry about. If you lighten the box, you're going to get gashed in the run game. If you load the box, you got to go one-on-one on the outside. And when Hurts is playing well, I mean, we saw it. They 55 points. That's the most points ever scored in a championship game.
And the guy that no one talked about coming into this game on Sunday, who actually did a lot of damage, was Dallas Goedert. 7 catches for 85 yards. He was, hey, you're going to take away A.J. Brown. You're going to try and, nullify Devontae Smith. The tight end's going to do some work, and he did. I thought the Eagles were just a very well-rounded football team. I mean, hell, they were benching starters at the end of the NFC Championship game. Think about that.
Yeah.
But still, Jalen Hurts, he was impressive to me. I thought that, I don't like Tom Brady. I think he's getting better as an announcer. But he talked about how Jalen Hurts is best when he doesn't hold on to the ball. And if you watch the game, boy, did that play out 100%. Like when he gets the ball out in time and in rhythm, I think this Eagles offense is really starting to get going. But let's talk about the Commanders for a second. Jaden Daniels, he goes 29 of 48, 255 yards, a 5.3 yard average. He did throw an interception, did throw a touchdown, was sacked 3 times. He's a rookie. What do you take away from Jaden Daniels' experience in this game and how you think he played?
He's only going to get better. I think he's with the right coordinator in Cliff Kingsbury. I feel like Jaden Daniels obviously needed some more opportunity from his defense to maybe get that to a closer game. I think the killer was, it's 31-23 early in the fourth quarter, and Washington's got the ball, and they've got an opportunity to go down and score and maybe even tie the game up, and they throw a perimeter screen out to Austin Eckler, and he coughs the ball up, and then Philly just ran away from him from that point forward. He needed some help from his teammates that didn't arrive. Washington, though, is in pretty good position from a salary cap standpoint. They're going to be able to add some pieces that they need. I don't know their roster well enough to say exactly what they need, but I'm sure that they'll be in position now to build around Jaden Daniels. I mean, they're set up for a pretty good run over the next several years.
All right. So any other thoughts on the NFC Championship game before we go over to the AFC side?
Well, let me ask you, man, are you a believer in Philly? Because you've kind of been, not all bought in on the Eagles. So where do you stand now?
So I'm bought in on Saquon Barkley. That's where this resides for me. And if there's a team out there, and we'll talk about the Super Bowl matchup, the early thoughts in a second. If there's a team out there that can slow him down, I don't think you can stop Saquon Barkley, not with that offensive line. But if you can slow him down and really force Jalen Hurts to beat you, that's how you beat the Eagles. And I'm a believer in Saquon Barkley in that running game. We'll put it that way. I can't say that I'm 100% a believer in Jalen Hurts, that if a team were to slow down Saquon Barkley, is he going to be able to win you a Super Bowl? I still think that's a no. I'm sorry. Like, I know that Pez and all the other Eagles fans, including our CEO, Ken Wisniewski, probably don't want to hear that, but that's just what I think. What about you?
I think similar. I mean, if you can limit Barkley's damage, you got to take away the home runs. You got to make Philly drive the field and put together 13, 14, 15 play drives, because they have shown at times that they'll bog themselves down with some penalties or sacks. And that comes down to tackling. And Kansas City's an excellent tackling team. So you watch Barkley, when he breaks the second level, no safeties ever tackle him one-on-one. That is so much of a reason for – he set an NFL record on Sunday for the most 60-plus yard touchdowns in a single season. And all those explosive runs all come down to, at some point, a one-on-one between the running back and the safety. And he wins all of them. So Kansas City's got to keep him off the third level. That'll be the key.
All right, well, let's go to the Chiefs, and let's talk about the AFC Championship game. The Bills and Chiefs, 32-29. Chiefs win, advance to their third straight Super Bowl, chance to three-peat, something that's never been done in NFL history. And this game, unfortunately, was marred by controversy. And it's the same old, with the Chiefs getting the benefit of the doubt with the calls. I have to be honest, that is a takeaway, but it's not the biggest takeaway for me. The biggest takeaway for me is, good God, the Bills are cursed. Coach, what was your takeaway from the game?
Well, my biggest takeaway is this, man. The Chiefs just don't blink.
No.
Like, they don't blink, man. They beat you. And yeah, they get some help from the officials. It feels that way. They get some help from other teams that always seem to drop the key pass or miss the key tackle or whatever it might be. But that's not good. That's not luck. That's the Chiefs forcing you to be perfect. And when you're playing a team like that, you feel the weight of it. You feel the need to constantly have to play your not just your A game, but your A+ game. I mean, Josh Allen played great football on Sunday, but he didn't play his best game. He missed a few open receivers. He made some bad decisions. And just that little bit of a margin of error was enough for the Chiefs to beat them because they don't screw up. They make every catch that they need to make. Mahomes makes every throw he needs to make. Andy Reid knows exactly what you're going to do. I mean, my gosh, when the Chiefs get the ball back with less than 2 minutes left and they have the opportunity to run the clock out, twice they throw the ball because they know exactly what coverage Buffalo is going to be in, and they dial up the perfect beater to their running back, and their running back is wide open. That's not an accident, man. You got to drive the stake deep through their heart to beat them, and nobody's been able to do it.
It almost feels as if the only way to beat the Chiefs, and this is including some of the beneficial calls that they get, is they have to turn it over. They have to turn it over, and you have to turn those turnovers into points. And the Bills did that on one occasion. I believe they turned the fumble, but that was kind of like a botched run option, read option. But still, I think about the Chiefs. Okay, so they don't have like the most star-studded options in terms of receiving core. You got Hollywood Brown back finally, but he's still not a difference maker. Xavier Worthy is a blazer. Juju Smith-Schuster is still hanging on to whatever he has left in his career. And you got Travis Kelce and a couple other tight ends that are serviceable. Because let's be honest, Travis Kelce is a serviceable tight end at this stage of his career. And the Bills, but they always have the answer. The Bills, I mean, they have a good running core. I like James Cook a lot. But who do they have in the passing game? Khalil Shakir, Mac Hollins. I mean, Amari Cooper, they don't use him that much. They didn't have an answer, I didn't feel like. And Matt Collins having a great game with 3 catches and 73 yards and a touchdown. But they never had that answer. And credit to Steve Spagnuolo. Boy, does he know how to dial up exotic blitzes and pressures. And he got to Josh Allen when it mattered the most. 4th down plays, especially the last one. But I see a lot of people on social media beating up Dalton Kincaid. How tough that catch is. that 4th down throw, which is like a heave and a prayer. I mean, yes, could he have caught it? Yes. Should he have caught it? I think that's questionable. What's your take?
Here's the thing about that play, right? And no, I'm not going to beat him up because that's a tough catch. But ask yourself this: if the situation's flipped, does Travis Kelce make that catch?
That's a great point.
He makes it. That's the difference, man. Like those types of plays decide these games. So you're right. Spagnuolo, man, he ran those 0 blitzes, right? And those are dangerous blitzes, right? You're playing cover 0. There's no safety and you're coming. And the Bills were surprised by them, and I'm not sure why that was exactly, but they didn't really have an easy answer. I mean, the answer was for Josh Allen to keep backing up and then launch one down the field. Like there wasn't any like, right. You beat the 0 blitz with the ball's out of your hand now because you got a hot route or you got a slant or a man beater, and they just didn't have them. And that was kind of surprising to me.
So before we get into the officiating, I want to ask, what's your take on the Bills from an organizational standpoint? They just can't get past the Chiefs. Sean McDermott, there are people calling for this guy to lose his job. I don't agree with that necessarily, but I mean, you got to slay the dragon at some point, though, right?
You do. Remember, Peyton Manning went through this. Peyton Manning took him forever to finally conquer the Tom Brady dragon, and he was able to. They lost, I think, 3 times to the Patriots in the playoffs before they were able to beat them. It's unfortunate because it feels like whenever there's a dynasty, there's a team that's just beneath them that kind of gets lost in history as a really good team that couldn't become a great team because that dynasty was in the way. I mean, the Steelers of the mid-teens couldn't get past the Patriots, if you want to go way back, I mean, the Oakland Raiders couldn't get past the Steelers in the 1970s. They kept losing to the Steelers over and over. There's lots of teams like that. And I mean, Buffalo, I don't know if they're going to be fated to the history books to never conquer this, but their chances are running out.
And when you look at Josh Allen's record against the Chiefs in the regular season, he's never lost, and he's never beaten him in the playoffs when it matters the most. I mean, hell, well, let's be honest. This is not just a Bills thing. I think only the Bengals, am I right, have beaten the Chiefs in the postseason. They just seem to be the only team that can hang with them in that regard. But it's interesting. I don't know. Any final thoughts are we getting to officiating? Because I think this is going to take up some time.
All right, no, man, let's have it. Let's go.
All right. There were some very crucial calls made, and I don't think any was more, I don't want to say egregious, but any more controversial than the fourth down. They try the quarterback sneak with Josh Allen, and you see it immediately when both side judges are running to the middle to spot the ball. One has him easily a half yard ahead of the first down marker, while the other one is short of the sticks. And this is where I get so frustrated with the league, because there's no consistency. They're not seeing the same thing. And somehow or another, they don't go to replay. Replay assist does not chime in. And they mark him short. And so this is when I said this on Twitter, and I'll say it again. I've said it on the show before. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Multi-billion dollars. And you're telling me they can't have a chip in the football that tells you whether you have gotten the line to gain. I just don't understand it. That play flipped because there was a turnover on downs. The Chiefs go down and scored points, and everything just kind of flipped on its head. What was your take on that call in particular?
All right, well, a couple of things. First of all, not trying to promote my own show here in the middle of our show, but my show, my Call Sheet Daily podcast today, my guest is Leon Daniels, who's a referee, been a long-time college referee, and he refs high school games as well. And I'm going to talk to him about some of this stuff. And so the technology, would that help you? Why is the game so hard to officiate now? Because we obviously are having huge issues with officials. But let me tell you what's going on that play on the field. The side judge that comes running in from the Buffalo sideline appears to have it marked as a first down. The one running in from the Kansas City sideline marks it short. The moment the whistle is blowing, not probably before it's even blowing, Andy Reid and his assistants and all the Kansas City players are yelling at that official. He's short, he's short, he's short, he's short. They are putting tremendous pressure on him to mark it a certain way. And he's coming in. Now, you got to remember, too, he's also coming in from the back. He sees Josh Allen's back.
Right.
He doesn't see the football is visible from the other sideline, which really, to me, means you got to defer to that guy on the other sideline. He's got the clearer view of it. But the pressure that the Chiefs are putting on, and knowing that this is Andy Reid, who, much like Belichick, now is in that stratosphere where you're going to get those calls, I think the officials cave to that pressure.
Well, from a football's perspective, I don't know the answer to this because I've never coached football. How do they figure out whose spot is correct? So when you have two side judges running into the middle of the field, you're trying to spot the football. One guy says, I've got him here, and the other one says, I've got him here. How do they decide which is right and which is wrong?
They have a conference. And ultimately, they do. And ultimately, it's really the head official. It's his job to essentially make a decision. And ultimately, he'll, you get this sort of majority rules type mentality, or the guy who's most adamant is usually the one who they'll defer to. A guy might come in and be like, hey, I thought I saw this. And the other guy will say, no, I had this. I have him short of the line. Are you sure? I have him short of the line. That's how it works.
That just makes it even worse. That makes everything worse. Because again, we talked about this last week. Replay assist. It is in that position for them to say, we have it on video right now. I can see it because they had video replay of it. We all saw it on the telecast. He got it. The football's ahead of the line to gain. We got to respot it. And they just don't make those decisions. And I understand what's happening. And this is my own personal feeling on it. The NFL is so scared to show up their officials. They don't want to overturn like a crucial call. The Xavier Worthy catch is another one. We'll talk about that now. It's a jump ball. His hand is underneath the football. I can't say he has possession, but the ball does touch the ground. If anything, you're thinking, okay, just rule it incomplete. Rule it incomplete. And I think there was a defensive call, a defensive flag on that play, in which case Kansas City would have gotten a first down and 5-yard penalty. I think it was a defensive holding. But I don't know, Coach. Like, it doesn't make sense from an officiating standpoint. We've talked about this for 2 years, but still, what's your take on that?
Well, that one bothered me more because the first one is sort of a judgment, but that one, the ball is clearly on the ground. There are multiple hands on the ball.
Yeah.
The receivers, Worthy's got his hand on the ball, but so does the D-back. So by definition, no one has clear possession. If no one has clear possession and the ball is touching the ground, it's an incomplete pass.
Right.
I mean, that's just how it is. Worthy, when they roll over, Worthy wrestles it away and finally gains position, but that is after the ball has touched the ground. And that is a no-brainer to me. That's incomplete.
I don't get it. And I said this last week talking about previewing this game, the only thing I wanted was the officiating to not be a narrative. Do you think that some of these calls that took place marred what was a really good football game, that kind of took something away from this game?
Well, let me answer your question with a question. If this had been the Steelers and they had lost that, what would the narrative be?
I'd be furious.
You can feel the angst of Bill's Mafia, right now.
Yeah, I would be livid, absolutely livid, and they have every right to be angry. They do. They have every right to be angry, and I don't know. So, okay, we will stir on this. We'll have another week to talk about it, I'm sure, as we have to wait 2 weeks for the Super Bowl. But let's do some initial thoughts on the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans is going to be a repeat from a few years ago. Eagles, Chiefs. What are your initial thoughts on that?
It's going to be a great football game. That last one was a great football game. And that last one was a game where officiating marred the end. A very controversial pass interference call on the Eagles in the final minute that allowed Kansas City to get into field goal range and kick their game-winning field goal. I just feel as though this is a game where Kansas City will have to figure out a way, as we were talking about earlier in the show, to limit the damage that Barkley does. He's got to be their primary objective. Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown, dangerous on the outside, but however you're going to do it, whatever decisions you got to make to get that extra defender on Barkley or to run blitz the hell out of him, whatever it might be, you got to limit him. You got to tackle him, man. You got to be willing to tackle him, and you got to get as many hats to the ball as you can. It starts there. And then with Philly on the other side of the football, the Chiefs' offensive line is very good. Philly's defensive line is excellent. Pressure on Mahomes, man. Make Mahomes uncomfortable. We've seen Mahomes be pressured into mistakes. And when you make him uncomfortable, he becomes human. So for me, those are the two big matchups, man. It's going to all be, what happens on the interior on both sides of the ball.
Hey, if I just pissed off Eagles fans earlier saying that how I'm not a 100% believer, I do think they match up well with the Chiefs, both sides of the ball. They can run the ball. I know the Chiefs' defensive front with Chris Jones is very good, but I think they can run on anyone with that offensive line and Saquon Barkley. I think that the receiving weapons that they have on offense is going to be an advantage Philadelphia. And defensively, I think they've got the secondary to do it in terms of hanging with some of the receivers that we talked about. The question will be, can Nick Sirianni, who I still don't know what that guy does, can Nick Sirianni and his staff somehow, some way have his team equally prepared as Andy Reid? And I don't know.
Right.
I don't know if is that possible in your opinion?
Well, they got to keep them guessing. If Andy Reid gets a beat on what you're doing, like we saw in the Buffalo game, he has the answers, and the Chiefs will execute, and they'll make you pay. So the Philly staff has 2 weeks to break tendencies and come up with creative ways to keep the Chiefs guessing. Nick Sirianni, I saw the statistic after the NFC Championship yesterday. He's the first coach in NFL history to, in his first 4 years, make the playoffs every season and go to 2 Super Bowls. No coach has ever done that in their first 4 years, and the Eagles fans hate him. They hate him. You talk to Eagles fans, they're like, that guy sucks. So I don't know, man. Everybody should be so unlucky as to have a guy like that, I guess.
Yeah, his demeanor is weird. The times where it seems like other coaches are telling him to go away and not talk to certain players, it's so strange. But you
Well,
cannot.
he gives off the vibe of like the dude who calls up like sports talk radio to like yell about stuff.
Yeah,
You know, like he doesn't give
yeah.
off the vibe. He feels like he lowers himself. He beefs with fans, you know, and he gets into these, and he just his whole demeanor is just like, you know, he's like Joe from Fishtown, you know, like he just called in to like complain about the third down play calling.
Someone said this on, I can't take credit for it, but I once I saw it and read it, I can't get it out of my brain. And that it looks like he was a guy that won a contest to like be the coach of a day. And like that's what it looks like when he's on the sideline. But hey, he's got his team to the Super Bowl again. We'll see. We'll talk about that next week. But let's go to our next topic. Where do you put the Bills in the pantheon of tortured fan bases? So let's the Bills are definitely there. I would say the Cleveland Browns are definitely there. What other fan bases would be in this pantheon?
Well, the Detroit Lions. I mean,
Yep.
they have
That's
not won a championship of any sort in 55 years or so. More than that, actually, because they've never won a Super Bowl. They've never been to a Super Bowl.
Right.
I mean, to a much lesser degree, certainly not in this conversation. But I mean, you know, the Arizona Cardinals, because they haven't been in Arizona that long. Now they've been to the Super Bowl once and they lost in excruciating fashion to the Steelers. But they have an incredible streak of futility in terms of their regular season all-time record. But I think the big three are Detroit, Cleveland, and Buffalo. And
so where do you rank the Bills amongst that triad?
That's a great question. It might be number two. It might be number two. I think if I were going 1, 2, and 3, I would probably put Detroit as number 1 because they've had so little success. Like the Browns have at times been decent. You know, you had a decent run there with Bernie Kosar, a couple of AFC championship games, really close to the Super Bowl. You had another run a few years back, but with Baker Mayfield, et cetera. But Detroit, outside of the last 2 years, they haven't even been close. They hadn't won a playoff game before last season since 1991. And they had the longest streak of losing seasons of any team in football history. They're the only team, I think are there 2 teams now to go 0 for the season, but they were the first.
Yep.
So, I mean, they haven't even gotten – now Buffalo's futility is probably more frustrating because they've been so close so many times. But Detroit's has just been abysmal. My friend Wayne, who I had on my show and was a Jets fan. Now, you could probably put the Jets in this conversation too.
Yeah, you could. And
he told me, he said, I asked him, I said, would you rather be a Jets fan where you're every year by October, your season's over? Or would you rather be like a Bills fan and be so close and never get there? And he said, I would take the Bills reality over the Jets reality 10 times out of 10 because at least you have hope. And he's like, as a Jets fan, you don't even have hope.
So the Jets could be in that pantheon. I think the Vikings, believe it or not, if you look at the Vikings history, they had some cursed times. Shout out to David Stefano. I know he's listening. So for me, I would say Lions 1, Browns 2, Jets 3, and let's put the Bills next because the Bills have at least been there. Whether you're talking about the 90s with Jim Kelly, like where they got to all those Super Bowls, at least they got there. They've had tremendous success with Josh Allen. They just can't slay that proverbial dragon. They're a tortured fan base. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But I just don't think that there's definitely more tortured fan bases than those right there. But let's go. We're gonna have a lot of time to talk about this for sure next week. But let's also not forget that there have been some coaching hires. Our next topic is the fact that we had some surprising hires, one in particular with Brian Schottenheimer being named the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. This is weird. I also Pete Carroll going to Vegas is another shocker. Carroll, I didn't realize he's 73 years old. Interesting stat there. Coach, what was the most surprising for you?
I think the Pete Carroll thing is all about culture. You know, they experimented with a first year head coach in Antonio Pierce, first time head coach, and it felt like they never got the locker room right, or they never got the optics right. And they want a guy who can really stabilize the culture there. You know, Tom Brady, obviously with his experience in New England, values that. He's part of that ownership group now. So the Pete Carroll thing made some sense. The Schottenheimer thing, for me, the only explanation is it's just about Jerry Jones and control. Like, he gets a guy who he can control. I mean, Schottenheimer has been a NFL lifer, college ranks. He's on his 9th pro team. I mean, this is his 9th NFL team. He's been a coordinator, but never a head coach. He was the coordinator in Dallas, but he didn't call the plays. So what does that tell you, right? That tells you that the head coach didn't entrust him enough to be able to do that. And for Jerry Jones, it's just, I mean, it's a lapdog, right? I mean, this guy's going to do whatever the hell I tell him to do, because he's just so thankful to have the opportunity finally as a 51-year-old to get a head coaching job.
I agree with you that Schottenheimer's the most surprising. And I guess my question is, and we kind of said this before we hit record, did he not have control over Mike McCarthy? I believe he did. Like, he still controlled everything about that team, and Mike McCarthy had his guys playing tough. I just feel like this is either a lesser than or a lateral move. Like, you didn't improve your team by hiring Schottenheimer. Maybe he'll prove me wrong. I've been proven wrong many times, but this hire just felt weird. It felt delayed. Everything about this coaching, I don't even want to call it a search, because they didn't even have a search. They were like, well, McCarthy's contract expires on this day. And then when the contract expires, Jerry Jones released a statement thanking Mike McCarthy for his time as the coach. You could have fired him long ago and been in the front seat for some of these bigger name coaches or coaching candidates. And instead they just sat on their hands, and then they end up with Brian Schottenheimer. Like, really? I thought, believe it or not, over the weekend, one of the most surprising things for me was Robert Saleh going back to the 49ers as the defensive coordinator. I thought for sure he might get another look, but Jacksonville made their decision going with Cohen from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Interesting stuff in the coaching front. Any other final thoughts on that?
And then Ben Johnson, of course, to the Bears.
Aaron Glenn.
That's an interesting one. I think Ben Johnson got a lot of control in Chicago, and he's going to be able to make a lot of decisions that he wants. So that was probably attractive to him. The Cohen story's weird, just about how he was coming back to Tampa, and then he was like, he was like, he went dark for a little while. They literally could not get in touch with him, and it is interesting stuff. There's only 32 of these jobs, man.
That's right,
and it's the ultimate in competitiveness to be able to land one of them. So you see some weird things.
We'll see what else happens as 2 more teams now start their offseason ahead of the Super Bowl. But let's finish this up with a player profile. Zach Ertz, who had himself a game, even though the Commanders lose and only score 23 points. Zach Ertz, if I'm giving you the stats here, he ended up with 11 catches on 16 targets for 104 yards. What do you want to say about Zach Ertz, Coach?
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually had forgotten about Zach Ertz. Yeah. Like, he had a great run in Philly. Then he kind of left and went out to Arizona and sort of disappeared after a couple of years out there in the desert. And, quite honestly, man, I just sort of forgot he was in the league. And then, man, has a heck of a game. And Philly fans love Zach Ertz. He's one of those guys that when he comes back, the Eagles fans will cheer for him. There aren't too many guys like that. But I started to look up his stats, and I didn't realize this. Zach Ertz is 6th all time in receptions for tight ends.
Wow.
And has a chance. Now, I don't know how long he's going to play, but he's got a chance to go over 10,000 career receiving yards. And if he does that, he'll wind up being in the top 3 in tight ends all time in history. And I thought to myself, man, if Zach Ertz does that, he's a Hall of Fame guy. Those are Hall of Fame numbers anyway. He's got a Super Bowl under his belt. So he's kind of an under the radar guy that's had a heck of a career that you kind of forget about.
I think he's a perfect example of how your quarterback matters. He's with Philly, has a good career there and good tenure in Philadelphia, goes out to Arizona, never really finds a spot. Kyler Murray's in and out of the lineup due to injury. And then obviously he goes with Jaden Daniels, and Jaden Daniels is targeting the tight end. He loves to throw over the middle. Zach Ertz, that's where he lives and makes his money. and he has a little resurgence. I hope he continues to play. I like Zach Ertz. I think it's good to have guys that continue to play at a high level for a long periods of time. But all right, Coach, I want to give you an opportunity. You already kind of plugged your podcast for Monday.
Yep.
What's coming up though on the Call Sheet Daily?
So yeah, man. So right, we got Leon Daniels, man, like longtime referee on Tuesday on the show. That's going to be a great conversation. Wednesday is our Whiteboard Wednesday, where we do our X's and O's. That's been the most popular episode of the Call Sheet on the weekly basis so far, the Whiteboard Wednesday. So tune in for that. And we'll be breaking down some of Kansas City's man beaters. How do they draw up these plays that beat man-to-man coverage? They're so good at it. You know, what are the Chiefs doing with their route combinations against man coverage? That'll be our topic of conversation on Wednesday.
All right. I look forward to hearing them. As always, they're shorter shows, like 15 to 20 minutes. So make sure you check those out. The Call Sheet Daily, wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to check out our work at the Steel Curtain Network, he was on my Monday morning conversation. Go to Steel Curtain Network, wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in, listen up, and we'll be back next week. Coach, thanks for your time, man. We'll talk to you. See you.